Inequalities number lines with Adam Maths Tutor. Here are the beginner questions, some of the easier questions that you're likely to find on this topic. Inequalities are mathematical expressions that compare two values or expressions using symbols like less than, greater than, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to. They show the relationship between quantities that are not strictly equal to each other, so therefore they're used to represent a range of possible values that satisfy a condition. Unlike equations, which give exact solutions, we can represent inequalities diagrammatically using number lines. We do this by using a circle on the number, in this case positive 3. If the sign was less than or equal to, we would then have to include the colour and have a closed circle. Since the symbol does not include the equal to bit, we will not have to include the colour and we'll keep this as an open circle. Our range and values for x are less than 3. Notice that x is on the smaller side of the arrow. This means that x is less than 3. We could read this the other way round and see that 3 is on the open side of the arrow, or the larger side of the arrow, which means that 3 is greater than x. So this symbol can be read as less than from left to right, but greater than from right to left. Since x represents my range of values less than 3, this would be all of my values going to the left of my circle on the number line. And since this number line would continue for infinity, but we're just looking at this snapshot that goes between -5 and 5, I will need to finish by putting an arrow to signal that this would continue in this direction. The second type of question you can have is where the number line is already drawn for you and you need to tell them what the inequality is instead of them asking you to draw the number line from the inequality. So starting with x, we can see that the arrow is going to the right of the circle, meaning that x represents values greater than. So putting the open side of my arrow towards x, since it's a closed circle which includes the colour, it also means that it can be equal to this number, and the number in question is -2. So this number line represents the inequality x is greater than or equal to -2. On to the intermediate question. With an increase in difficulty, we can have compound inequalities, often referred to as double inequalities. These involve two inequalities combined. This means that x is greater than -4, and at the same time x is less than or equal to 5. We can represent these with a number line by using a circle on each of the numerical values of -4 and +5. Since x is strictly greater than -4 and not also equal to, we would leave this as an open circle, whereas x is less than or equal to 5, which means this one on 5 needs to be represented as a closed circle. And instead of using an arrow that goes to the left or the right, the range of values for x is everything in between these. So we represent this by connecting a line from the circle on the left to the circle on the right. For the second part of this question, we need to write down the inequality shown on the number line. This closed circle is on -4, and since it's closed, we know that x will have to be a value that's greater than or equal to -4. Just be careful, in this case we are using y as the letter to represent our values rather than x. So we know y has to be greater than or equal to -4 and less than 3. Since it's an open circle, we do not need to include the equal to bit on the inequality symbol. On to the advanced question, one of the trickiest questions that you're likely to find on this topic. On the number line, shade the regions that satisfy x being less than -1/2 or x being greater than 3, and at the same time x being less than 4. We can use a number line to represent these inequalities individually. The key is in the language used here, and we'll first start off with this inequality where it says that x is less than -1/2 or x is greater than 3. This would be represented with an open circle in between -1 and 0, with an arrow going to the left to represent less than, or at the same time, so keeping this level with the one that I've already drawn, x is greater than 3, which would be an open circle on 3 with an arrow going to the right hand side to represent greater than. That's my first inequality represented by my number line. Now I can think about the second, where x is less than 4. That would be an open circle on 4 with an arrow going to the left to represent less than. If it needs to represent this one and this one at the same time, we'll be looking for the regions where these overlap on our number lines. That would be a shaded region from the furthest left-hand side all the way up to -1/2. And there's also an overlapping region between 3 and 4. If I were to represent these regions using inequalities, which they haven't asked me to do, so it doesn't need to be completed, but I could do that by saying x has to be less than -1/2, or x is greater than 3 but less than 4. Here's a question that I've completed earlier. It appears as though I've made some mistakes. Pause the video and see if you can spot what they are before writing some corrections in the comments below.
Thanks for watching. If you found that video useful, don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment. If you're struggling with topics or finding maths difficult, subscribe and turn on notifications to receive regular updates about new video tutorials and other useful content. You can visit and follow all of my socials by clicking the links in the description below.